When you think about it, there are actually multiple different levels of financial independence. I talk about financial independence a lot, but whenever I think about it, I typically just think of you have investments or you have passive income that covers for all of your costs. And I didn't think about there being any steps before or after that. It was like a one-point destination to me. But after I was watching a Woke Wednesday video by Ali Abdaal and his former roommate, now Sheen, they were talking about this book that Ali had read, and now it had all these different levels of financial independence. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So thinking about that, plus adding one or two myself, thought I'd make this video. Let's talk about the different levels of financial independence, and then maybe it'll help you to locate where you are on that scale and think about what it would take to get to the next level. The first level of financial independence is you being independent financially from your parents, from outside help, from anybody like that in your life kind of had to support you because you were too young or you didn't have the skills that you needed. Now you have the skills. Now you have a job, you can support yourself, and you're doing good. So if you're really young and watching this, I know that some people that watch my videos are like teenagers or you're in college. Think about that as your first goal. Don't just have this one-off lofty goal of like being rich and famous someday. Think about what would it take you to be financially independent from your parents or financial aid or whatever else is kind of helping you pay the bills right now, and set that as your goal. The second level of financial independence is really important for anybody, and that is not living paycheck to paycheck. What this means implicitly is that our spending is less than our income. And you might be seeing that and going, well, duh, of course. But for a lot of us, no matter how much money we make, this is where we get stuck. I can speak from experience here. I thought that I would be one of those people that goes, well, if I get a raise, of course I'll save and invest more. Of course I'll pay off debt. I'll be responsible. I'll be one of those people that doesn't have to have my lifestyle go up with my income. Like, that's so dumb. Why would people do that? I'll tell you right now, it's different whenever you're in that situation. Whenever you go, it just doesn't matter. I have enough money to impulse buy whatever that item is, whatever that thing on Amazon is, or go out to dinner or buy that fancy coffee every day. Like, when you can do it and it doesn't hurt you financially, it's really easy to just justify it. And we have to kind of stop that. We need to set a higher goal overall than just level 2 out of all these levels of financial independence. If we are able to do that and move past this second level, we'll get to the third level, which is sort of a traditional approach. What that looks like is slowly saving and growing your overall investments to be able to retire in like your really late 50s or maybe early 60s with like this nest egg and or a pension and or a paid off house. For I think most people nowadays, a pension isn't really a thing. And so for us to reach this third level, it's up to us. Like, we have to take advantage of things like retirement accounts through our employer, or we have to set up things like IRAs for ourselves and go ahead and contribute that money for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years to then be able to have that nest egg, the proverbial nest egg, that's big enough to then sustain us whenever we choose to not work. Or sometimes people are forced into retirement by health or other circumstances. Like, sometimes it's just time to not work anymore. And so to have all that built up, to have paid off your house, to have paid off all your other debts in the meantime would be a great feeling. Like, I would love to be there. I'd love to be there earlier than my 60s, but even then, that's awesome. And by the numbers, the average American saver is not anywhere near here. The average person in their 60s even has less than $300,000 saved for retirement. And if you think about living on even $30,000 a year, that's only 10 years worth of expenses. If you live on more than that, it's a lot less time than that. So I think this is a really great goal for most people. Most people, regardless of a lot of other circumstances and excuses, can get here. We can do this. But even if you see that and you go, no, I want to be even more than that or faster than that, this next level of financial independence, the fourth one, is for you. The fourth level of financial independence is where you save and invest kind of similarly to number 3, but you do it hard. You do it with this huge level of intensity. You sacrifice however much you can stand to sacrifice. You make as much money as you can, and you basically do that whole thing, but fast forwarded. So where you end up is the same result, where you have a nest egg, you have investments, you've paid off all your debts, you've paid off your house, you get to that same finish line, but you do it before your 60s. Some people do it as early as their 30s, which is like incredible, but a lot of people nowadays are doing it in their 40s and 50s. As far as how you do this, the tactic isn't really any different than the third step: save and invest and be frugal for a long time. We just do that with a lot more intensity and fervor to try and make it happen sooner. And this is kind of the traditional like FIRE path: financial independence, retire early. It's this movement that's really blown up. There's documentaries about it now. There's people getting interviewed on the internet all the time now. Like, this is kind of my trajectory up until very recently, was let's do that. Let's just try and save and invest super hard, way harder than anybody else that I know, and try and get there sooner. Like, how cool would that be if by the time my kids are like graduating high school or college, we could just retire? We could just go, hey, we'll go travel now, or we'll go hang out and do whatever we want. We'll do our hobbies and not have that next like decade or two of work. And until recently, I thought that was really the top level. Like, outside of winning the lottery or getting some kind of crazy IPO for the company that you started in Silicon Valley. Like, there was no other kind of higher level than that to me that you could even shoot for. I thought just do this as fast as possible. But there is another level, and it's even better. The fifth and final level of financial independence is leveraging your time and your skills by building the machine to do work for you. Basically, it's getting the work done for you faster and constantly, and whether or not you're involved. So what we do is we have to leverage three different things to do that: code, content, or people. Code has nothing to do with like secrets or James Bond. Code is talking about software. So it's probably pretty obvious by now, but people write enough software that they don't necessarily have to be involved. Once they get that machine rolling, the software does the bulk of the work. So that's a huge multiplication factor on top of your energy and your skills. It's just amazing. The next one being content, like podcasts, newsletters, YouTube videos, blogs, anything like that. I mean, social media, entrepreneurship, all of that kind of thing. Content is the easiest it's ever been to get into nowadays. And then finally, people. You could always have more of a traditional business model and just hire people to do some of the work that you can train them to do, so that in the same workday, you get the work done for 4 or 5 people because you've hired 4 or 5 people on top of whatever you're doing. And hearing all this really reminded me of this book that I read. It's super fascinating. So it's a shorter book, and it's actually a book based on a series of tweets, which is such an odd concept. But there's this guy who's an entrepreneur who's wildly successful. Angel investor, serial entrepreneur. His name is Naval Ravikant. And what he did one day was realize, if I can share some of this knowledge, if I can share some of these like principles of life and wealth building and entrepreneurship with people, then it will help them. And so his form of doing this was just in Twitter. Like, he did this tweet storm, rapid fired these tweets out. And so someone took those tweets and partnered with him, and they made it into a book. And so the book is called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, A Guide to Wealth and Happiness. And one of the things he talks about is how to get rich without getting lucky. And he's got a whole bunch of things that he says about it. And I took just tons of notes, like pages of notes on this, but he kind of taps into a similar concept. He calls it business leverage. And specifically, he really prefers things that cost nothing to replicate. So if you can scale your business with essentially no additional cost, like, that's incredible. It's like having Thanos' gauntlet, but in the form of business. Like, you snap your fingers and more stuff happens. That's incredible. So out of those 3 things I mentioned before, Naval is kind of against labor. Like, hiring people is both a lot of work, and it's a lot of upkeep, and it's expensive. Like, that's kind of the biggest thing. For a lot of businesses, overhead is the number one expense line item. And so it's a lot easier to have something that replicates itself without there being more people involved. And so Naval encourages us all to either get into code or media, because they're permissionless leverage, he says. They're the leverage behind the newly rich. You can create software and media that works for you while you sleep. So there's a little bit of capital involved in that, in getting that kind of thing started up. But compared to the days of yore, like, way less than before. You can probably learn to code online for free. You can definitely make content online for free. And I love this line that he says. He says, if you can't code, write books and blogs, record videos and podcasts. And I was like, yes, because for forever, people have talked about the benefits of coding. And I've always been like, look, I'm moderately technology savvy. I'm not going to learn how to code. Like, there's no way. Thankfully, for the rest of us that don't, we can do books and blogs, videos and podcasts. We can run some social media accounts. We can make this into a real business. And speaking of business, I like how he tells us to avoid business magazines and classes and books and stuff. He goes, there's no skill called business. It's all microeconomics and game theory and human psychology and persuasion and ethics and mathematics and computers. It's a matter of putting together all those different things and combining them into doing. He says, doing is faster than watching. And I think what really separates that 5th level from the previous ones are, A, the potential for like rapid growth. But the beauty of it too is the way that you don't have to be so hands-on. In the financial levels 3 and 4, you had to be really hands-on, working really hard, saving and investing. Your labor and your time was what contributed to your overall success. The power of the 5th level is that it's divorced from your time. So you could potentially set something up now, write a children's book and get it published, and it could pay dividends for the rest of your life. I was going to say for the next decade, but it could be for the rest of your life. Like, a lot of authors don't even really get popular until they die. So hopefully that would be the opposite for you, where you get popular right away and then you can reap the benefits for forever. But that concept of not being tied to your time is really what makes this like next level. Because if you think about, let's throw out the idea of like crazy rich, like Naval Ravikant. Like, we're not talking about billions of dollars, but what if you wrote a children's book and it paid you $100,000 a year for the rest of your life? That frees up so much of your time and your energy to do do whatever else. Like, go and love people like you have never loved them before. Go and serve and teach kids how to write books, or be there for your family members whenever they need you, or whatever. Like, you just have this ultimate freedom to go and do whatever the most fulfilling thing is. So that's a really cool, like, unique thing here. And to clarify on all of these levels, I don't want you to think that you have to go through this list and like make it to step 5. Like, that's not the goal of this, is to necessarily check off every box. Not everyone needs to build the machine in the form of a business or content or whatever it looks like to go and do work for them. I think just like nailing down step 2 and not living paycheck to paycheck is honestly the most important of them all, because that means that you have the potential to get into 3, 4, and 5. Now you have this extra income on top of your living expenses. You can go, now I can put this income to work. I can invest it, or I can start a business or whatever. But until we get there, nothing else is even possible. I think all of these are perfectly good. Like, all these levels of financial independence are good. If you want to, you can leave a comment below that kind of shares like what your overall goal would be. You can be as specific or as vague as you want. You could reference these 5 levels if you want, whatever that makes sense to you. But sometimes it's kind of helpful to force yourself to pick something, to write down a goal, to solidify it in your own life and think, what would that look like? If I was doing level 4 and I saved and invested really hard, what would that look like? So if you want to do any of that thinking in the comments, then feel free. The comment section is meant to be something that's open and safe and generally friendly. So if anybody gets really crazy down there, I'll do my best to delete some unsavory comments. Also, if you made it this far and you're looking for the secret comment to make, this time it's going to be something around robots. Robot emoji, robots that do the dishes for you, robots that build a business for you, anything like that, because that's kind of what Ali and Naval are both talking about when they talk about building the machine. It's like this army of robots out there in the form of the internet doing all this stuff for you. So anything robotic, maybe you did the robot dance while you were watching this video, that's the secret word. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys later. Bye.